Going to have a look at the day's business news now. Stephen Carroll from our business desk here on set. Stephen, US lawmakers, of course, 13 days now to avoid going over that fiscal cliff. A bit of a sign that they're moving a bit closer together?
Yes, possibly moving towards a compromise. The President held a meeting with the Republican Speaker of the House of Representatives, John Boehner, on Monday. 45 minutes they met for. Afterwards, President Obama came out with his latest compromise offer. He's proposing $1.2 trillion in tax increases versus $1.2 trillion in spending cuts as well over the next 10 years. President Obama is trying to raise the US debt ceiling so the US government will have enough money for at least the next 2 years. And Nicholas Rushworth has the latest on that budget battle for us.
A new offer on the table. President Barack Obama and the Republican House Speaker John Boehner have edged closer to a deal to avert falling off that fiscal cliff. Obama now is proposing spending cuts of $1.22 trillion over 10 years, down from $1.6 trillion initially. The top tax bracket would rise to 39.6% from the current 35% for those earning more than $400,000 US. The Republicans over the weekend proposed a hike of the top tax band, though for those earning more than $1 million a year.
In order to achieve a broad deficit reduction package that puts our economy on a sustainable fiscal path in the future, a certain level of revenue gleaned from the wealthy has to be met.
Monday's compromise proposal has raised hopes there will be a deal ahead of the 31st of December deadline. Once both parties agree, it'll take around a week for the legislation to pass in the House and Senate. Also being discussed is how to stop recurrent fiscal showdowns. Obama wants the right to raise the borrowing cap ceiling without a prior vote by Congress.
So what are the markets then? How are they taking all that news?
Well, there was some optimism in Asia overnight on that prospect of a deal in the fiscal cliff. The Asian markets all ended up in positive territory, except for actually the Hang Seng. I can see there the composite index slightly down. The Nikkei up nearly 1%. Some optimism carrying over from the election results we saw on Saturday. Also, the one particular share that we were talking about was the nuclear power company TEPCO. They did very well after that election result was declared. Shares were up by a third yesterday, rising again today, up 17%. That's because the new Japanese government aren't likely to cut down on nuclear power, which had been a proposal of their outgoing counterparts. Here in Europe, the markets opened in the green too. It's worth keeping an eye today, though, on the index in Italy. There's a vote coming up in the Italian Senate on the budget. And, of course, we know that once it goes through the Senate, then it goes to the Parliament, and Mario Monti has said he will resign once that budget law passes. So interesting to keep an eye on how investors are reacting to that news.
OK, well, let's come all the way back over here to France now. And the government is due to discuss how it plans to cut €65 billion from public spending over the next 5 years. Now, the president's already promised there'll be no job losses in the public sector. Instead, the cuts are likely to fall on areas like social welfare payments and training budgets.
France's socialist government is turning its attention to reining in the state deficit, all the while vowing to maintain France's sacrosanct social model. It's what the government is calling a modernisation.
The state itself can do better in managing costs. It can be more efficient, achieve better results, and it involves the whole social security system and local and regional governments. It's about ensuring efficiency in the public sector by spending less, spending better.
A sleeker version of France's public sector, then, with the goal of reducing the budget deficit by €50 billion over 5 years. The government also needs to find $10 billion to cover tax breaks for business to make France more competitive, and another $5 to pay for measures, including ones combating poverty. A heady total, then, of €65 billion in cuts. One possible saving could come from ending family allowance benefits for high-earning households. Housing benefits, too, could be slimmed down. And there'll be cutbacks to France's civil service. Funding to local and regional government will be reduced by €750 million a year. Civil service pay will remain frozen. Public finance reform under the socialists has begun.
A quick look now at some of the day's company news in brief. And the US bank Morgan Stanley has been fined $5 million by US regulators over problems with Facebook's launch on the stock exchange. Morgan Stanley was accused of only telling certain analysts about concerns over the social network's revenue stream instead of the general public. The bank was handling the company's debut on the Nasdaq. Facebook's shares have fallen some 30% since they began trading.
A federal judge in the United States has denied a request by Apple to ban the sale of rival Samsung smartphones. Now, Apple was awarded over $1 billion in damages in August after a jury found Samsung had copied critical features of the iPhone and iPad. Now, the appeal judge also turned down Samsung's request for a new trial.
And the French car maker Renault has confirmed it's opening a factory in Algeria as President Francois Hollande is on an official visit to the country. The project has been agreed in principle and the Algerian state will take a 51% stake in it. Renault's sales have almost doubled in Algeria over the past year.
Now back to the Eurozone. The International Monetary Fund saying that Ireland could be given a little bit more breathing space to make cuts. Makes a change after all the talk of Italy and Spain and Greece over the last few weeks.
Exactly. The IMF has been paying out the latest instalment of its bailout loan to Ireland. In doing so, it had a look at the Irish economy and it suggested that perhaps Dublin could be given a little more time to introduce further cuts. The most recent of 6 austerity budgets passed earlier this month, €3.5 billion cut in that budget. They're worried, the IMF, that perhaps too much austerity could damage Ireland's economic recovery. This comes as Ireland is preparing to take over the presidency of the European Council in January. We heard from the Foreign Minister Eamon Gilmore on Monday, who said that their priority for this presidency would be stability, jobs and growth, something Francois Hollande would be very happy to hear. But he's also said they're going to try and tackle the issue of legacy bank debt, very important to Ireland. That's where nearly all of its bailout money has gone.
OK, now finally, Stephen's got some technology news for us. That probably means that I'm not actually going to understand it, which is probably the case, because I see here it's between Twitter and Instagram. I am on Twitter, Instagram I don't do, so explain this to me.
So Instagram is a photo sharing service. You can put filters on photos. It's very popular. You'll see users on Twitter using it a lot. What they've done is they've changed how the two interact. So Twitter's mobile apps are before you open a tweet and there's an Instagram photo and it appears straight away. Now you have to click through to Instagram's website to see the photo.
Okay.
The reason being they're trying to drive more traffic to Instagram's websites. So Instagram has 100 million users, was bought by Facebook for $1 billion in April of this year. The change they're trying to make is they're going to try and create advertising revenue out of it, part of a load of changes happening with Instagram. But an American research company has been looking at how the traffic has been affected. So the click-throughs from Twitter has fallen dramatically. You can see there on the 9th of December when the service stopped working. But that's the purple graph. The grey line, though, that's the traffic up to where Instagram's website has been in. So they're not really matching up. You can see that Instagram is really losing out there. Could be very worrying for them. Twitter at the same time has launched its own photo filter service. You can doctor your photos after you take them on Twitter. And so there's a lot of rivalry coming up for Instagram there. Could be some difficult times ahead.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if they finish up changing that back again, won't it? OK, I understood it. Well done. Thank you very much. Perfectly explained. Stephen Carroll with the business here on France 24. More news coming up. Cyril will be here after the break.